What happens when the land itself begins to fail a predator that has spent millions of years perfecting how to survive? There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over the southern highlands of Tanzania just after dusk. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of listening. Doors are barred a little too early. Fires are kept a little too bright. Children are counted twice before sleep. This is Njombe. For nearly 2 decades in the middle of the 20th century, the people who lived in this highland district did not fear the dark because of superstition alone. They feared it because the dark had teeth, and the teeth belonged to something that should never have existed, a pride of lions that had stopped hunting animals and started hunting people, not as an isolated tragedy, but as a way of life passed from one generation of lions to the next. Picture the landscape first, because the land explains everything that came after. Rolling grass highlands folded into forest, threaded with rivers, dotted with villages of mud brick homes and thatched roofs. It looks, in photographs, almost gentle, but beneath that gentleness was a region where the balance between predator and prey had already been broken by forces no lion could control: disease, drought, and the sudden disappearance of the wild herds that lions had fed on for thousands of years. A lion is not naturally a hunter of humans. Everything about its body says otherwise. It is built to read the herd, the limping wildebeest, the aging buffalo, the momentary lapse of a zebra's attention. Its patience is legendary. A hunting lioness can lie motionless in grass for the better part of an hour, adjusting her body by inches, waiting for wind and shadow to align. Its senses are tuned to a world of hooves and horns, not to a species that walks upright and builds walls. So when the first accounts began to surface from the Njombe district, of lions entering compounds at night, of huts torn open, of families vanishing without a struggle loud enough to wake the next house, the story did not fit anything colonial officials or local elders had a framework for. This was not a single injured animal, driven to easy prey out of desperation, the way most man-eaters in recorded history have been. This was, over time, an entire pride, its habits passed down like inherited memory, hunting humans with the same cooperative precision lions usually reserve for buffalo. What makes this pride different from almost every other predator story in history is exactly that: scale, coordination, and time. Man-eating lions are rare and usually solitary. A wounded male, an aging female who can no longer chase healthy prey. The Njombe lions were neither wounded nor alone. For 15 years, between 1932 and 1947, this pride of man-eating lions stalked the district, and by the time it was over, they were reputed to have killed and devoured over 1,500 people, a number so large it strains belief, and yet one repeated across historical accounts, colonial records, and the memories of the people who lived through it. Humans fear lions instinctively, the way we fear little else in nature, an old fear, older than agriculture, written into us from a time when our ancestors were prey animals themselves. But we also misunderstand lions constantly, flattening them into either noble kings of the savannah or mindless killers, when the truth is something far more precise. A lion is a supremely adapted problem solver, and the Njombe pride had simply solved a terrible new problem: how to survive when the old prey disappeared, and something new and slow-moving had taken its place. To understand why this happened, you have to understand what was missing from the land. George Rushby, the British game warden, eventually sent to deal with the crisis, expressed genuine surprise at how many lions the district supported. Given how little natural lion prey existed there, he noted there seemed to be far more bush pigs than the antelope and buffalo lions typically depend on. This detail matters more than it first appears. Bush pigs are difficult, dangerous prey for lions, nocturnal, aggressive, tusked, and far less predictable than the herd animals lions evolved to specialize in. A pride surrounded by bush pigs and little else is a pride under nutritional stress, and nutritional stress is precisely the kind of pressure that pushes a highly intelligent, highly adaptable predator to consider prey it would otherwise avoid. Researchers who later studied the pattern of man-eating in this region found something else revealing. The areas near Tanzania's famous northern parks, Serengeti, Tarangire, Manyara, are rich with wildebeest, zebra and buffalo, and have almost no bush pig problem, which is why tourists visiting those parks have essentially nothing to fear from lions there. Njombe, by contrast, sat in an ecological gap, a place where the traditional prey base had thinned, and a new, harder to catch, less rewarding prey had moved in to fill the space. Into that gap walked something even easier to catch than a bush pig, an unguarded human asleep behind a door made of woven branches. Lion society is built on teaching. Cubs learn to hunt not by instinct alone, but by watching, following, and eventually joining their mothers and aunts on real hunts, refining technique over months and years. It is this exact mechanism, social learning within a pride, that becomes so dangerous once a pride discovers a new, reliable food source. Unlike solitary man-eaters, the Njombe lions hunted cooperatively. Witnesses described lions entering villages at night, dragging people from their huts, and coordinating attacks in a pack-like pattern that dramatically increased both their success rate and the resulting casualties. And crucially, once a pride adopted this strategy, the behavior did not die with the lions that learned it first. It persisted across generations, passed from mother to cub, the same way any other hunting technique would be. This is the science, stripped of myth. Not evil, not demonic, but a terrible feedback loop. Scarcity, opportunity, learning, and inheritance, turning a species built to avoid humans into one that specifically sought them out. The human cost is almost impossible to overstate, and it went far beyond the deaths themselves. Entire communities were paralyzed by fear. People stopped farming at dusk. Children were kept indoors. Trade collapsed. Some villages were abandoned outright. Survivors described nights filled with roaring, scratching at doorframes, and the screams of neighbors in huts nearby, a soundscape of dread that turned an entire district's relationship with the surrounding wilderness into something closer to siege. But here is where the story becomes as much about human belief as animal behavior. The people of Njombe did not, for the most part, interpret these killings as the actions of ordinary lions. A local witch doctor named Matamula Mangera was widely believed to be the true author of the deaths, a man said to command the lions themselves, directing their attacks against specific people and specific villages as acts of will, not appetite. Some accounts go further, describing a belief in lion men, human beings capable of transforming into lions or controlling them through sorcery, blurring the line between predator and person entirely. This belief was not simple ignorance. It was a coherent response to a genuinely bizarre pattern of events. Ordinary lions do not behave this way. Ordinary lions do not sustain an 18-year campaign against an entire district, adapting, evading traps, and returning even after individual animals were killed. To people watching this unfold, with no access to the ecological explanation, the missing herds, the bush pig-heavy prey base, the generational teaching of a hunting strategy, the idea of a human will directing the violence was, in a strange way, more logical than the truth. Researchers studying the region afterward noted that the belief in malevolent magic was deep and pervasive, and it became a genuine obstacle to controlling the killings. Families sometimes refused to report attacks to neighbors at all, fearing the death was punishment for some hidden wrongdoing by the victim. That belief had a real cost. If the danger is a witch doctor's curse, no rifle can end it, no trap can catch it, and cooperation with a foreign hunter becomes not just unhelpful, but potentially dangerous, an act of defiance against a man believed capable of directing lions like a general commanding troops. For years, this conviction slowed the response to the crisis almost as much as the lions themselves. The man who finally ended it was not a soldier or a mystic, but a game warden, practical, methodical, and running almost entirely on observation rather than legend. George Gilman Rushby, an Englishman working as a game warden in Tanganyika, was assigned to hunt down the man-eaters, and he formally led the campaign against the Njombe lions beginning in 1946. To carry out the operation, Rushby relocated his family to Mbeya, a town near Njombe in the southern Highlands, establishing a base from which to run a sustained, months-long campaign. His methods were not dramatic in the way fiction imagines lion hunts to be. There was no single, cinematic showdown. Rushby combined traditional tracking with patient, proactive baiting, conducting night vigils from elevated tree platforms called macans and from concealed ground blinds, using goats tethered inside thorn enclosures to draw the lions into range, while also setting covered gin traps along the paths lions were known to use and placing poisoned bait in areas where they had been feeding. It was slow work, built on understanding lion movement patterns rather than confronting the animals head-on, the same kind of patient observation a lion itself uses when stalking prey, turned back against the predator. Rushby spent years tracking, baiting, and eliminating lions across the Njombe district, one animal and one ambush at a time, dismantling a pride that had operated, evolved, and taught its methods across a decade and a half. There was no single man-eater to kill, and no single moment of resolution, only the slow, unglamorous reduction of a learned behavior, animal by animal, until the killings finally stopped. Strip away the witchcraft and the legend, and the Njombe story leaves behind something more useful than fear, a set of hard lessons about what actually keeps a person alive when sharing land with an apex predator. Imagine, for a moment, a herder or a traveler crossing open highland country near dusk in that era, the exact conditions that made the Njombe attacks possible. The single greatest factor in the Njombe killings was not lion aggression in open daylight confrontation. It was opportunity taken under cover of darkness, against people who were unaware, unarmed, and often asleep. This tells us the most important survival principle immediately. With lions, prevention outweighs reaction. The danger was never really about what to do in the middle of an attack. It was about never allowing the conditions for surprise to exist in the first place. If you ever stand where they once did, remember what the hunters learnt the hard way. Never run. A fleeing body is the only signal a lion's instincts are built to answer, and nothing on two legs outruns what evolved to chase. Stand tall instead. Raise your arms, close the distance to others near you. A lion reads size and unity as risk, and risk is something it avoids by nature. Watch the tail, not the eyes. A relaxed tail and forward ears mean curiosity. A flattened ear and a stiffening, twitching tail mean the decision has already been made. Retreat at an angle, slow and unhurried, the lion always in sight. Never the full turn of a back. That is the last thing a fleeing animal shows before it's caught. And never walk toward what isn't yours to approach. A carcass, a hidden litter of cubs, a pride at rest. Most encounters turn fatal, not because a lion hunted a person, but because a person wandered into a world they didn't know was already occupied. If it ever comes down to contact, the target is not the body. It's the eyes, the nose, the soft places a predator cannot afford to risk. A lion is not built to fight for its meals. It's built to win quickly or walk away. The Njombe lions are gone now, their story preserved in colonial records, in a single memoir, in the memory of a district that once counted its children twice each night. What they leave behind is not really a story about monsters at all. It is a story about what happens when an ancient, disciplined hunter is quietly stripped of its world, and about how easily fear, in the absence of understanding, reaches for magic when the truth is simpler, sadder, and far more preventable. An ecosystem out of balance will always, eventually, send something looking for what it has lost.